Hello and welcome to the Run the Day podcast. I'm your host, Nick Simmons. With me as always is Camala. Cam, how are you?
I'm great. The sun's out, so I'm happy.
It's sun's out here in Oregon, but also in Southern California, where today's guest, his company is based. It's ElliptiGO. If you haven't seen one of these things, they are incredible. And they are like head turners. I mean, when you see one, you're like, what is that?
Yeah. The other day we were sitting at dinner outside and one just went past. I was like, oh, I know what that is. That's an ElliptiGO.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
It's an incredible piece of technology, and it's helped me continue to get outside and continue a running motion, even though I can't run the miles that I used to.
Yep. Without the pounding.
I know your dad loves it for the same reason.
He loves it. Yeah. It's such a brilliant invention. And Bryan just thought of this, put it down on a piece of paper.
Scratched it out on a napkin, basically.
Made it into Microsoft Word. I don't even know how you draw in Microsoft Word. And then launched it.
His name's Bryan Pate. He's the co-founder and the CEO of ElliptiGO, and the man has lived at least 12 lives. And we're going to get into a few of them. Without further ado, here he is, Bryan Pate. All right, here he is from Charleston, West Virginia today, actually. Bryan Pate, how are you?
Oh, I'm loving it. The sun's finally come out here in Charleston.
Yeah, what are you doing over in West Virginia?
So actually right now we're visiting my wife's father. My wife was actually born here in Charleston, but we were both raised in San Diego. I was actually born out there. But we're on a pretty cool trip looking at some of the smaller towns on the East Coast, and we're starting here in Charleston.
Where all is this adventure going to take you?
We're going to go up over around the Lake Michigan, and then out to Burlington, and then down the East Coast to Key West, and then back up into the deep South.
That is incredible. And you're just riding your ElliptiGO all over? Or are you going to drive some of that? I know they can handle it, but are you going to jump in the car or just keep cranking?
Yeah, no. I'll be mostly in the car. But there was a crazy British guy named Tim Woodier, who flew to the U.S. and put 6,000 miles on an ElliptiGO in 2 months.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
He went to
back
Key
and
West.
forth.
He started in New York City and went all the way down to Key West, then all the way up into Canada, Maine, and then finished back in New York City.
Wow.
So just super cool. He flew across, borrowed someone's ElliptiGO, and then he stayed at ElliptiGO owners' houses in almost every place he went.
Hilarious.
That's so cool.
So it's this super cool community sponsored, and his goal was to create a picture, like a coffee table book of photographs from all these cool little places in America. And so, he 6,000 miles in 60 days.
Was this his idea? This sounds like something that would be hatched up in like a marketing.
Yeah, it's a good marketing idea.
No. In classic ElliptiGO fashion, we had no involvement whatsoever.
Just organic.
That's cool.
It's totally organic.
That's so cool.
The customers self-arranged to support him, and Facebook. We have a super big Facebook community that we have no say in or control of. They just self-organized and created this experience for this guy.
I love it.
Shows that you're doing a lot of things right. You know, you have customers that love your product and they have a community of people that are doing things together.
Yeah, I think it's less about us and more about just the kind of people that have gravitated towards our product are the kind of people who want to meet other people with our product. It's a neat community.
I really want to dig into the company and the product and the community more, but I think we need to get to know you as an entrepreneur first. Cam and I were reading through your bio and joking that you've lived at least a dozen lives already. You grew up in San Diego in Southern California?
Yeah, I was born and raised actually in Coronado.
Okay, I know it, yeah. On the military base or where at?
No, right across the street from the golf course, actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm familiar with the island. Yeah. My dad was a Marine, and my mom's dad was in the Navy. But they sort of came out somehow they just settled in Coronado generations ago. And so everybody in my family went to Coronado High School, and most of them are still on the rock down there.
What was it like growing up there? I mean, obviously it's changed considerably in the last few decades and just exploded in population. I can't imagine how peaceful it must have been.
Yeah.
A few decades back.
The ocean.
Yeah.
Right. It is a really unusual part of the world that Coronado Island is. And when you're a kid, you don't appreciate that. You think everywhere in the world is like where you are. But now looking back, it was absolutely this super safe, super quiet. We had like 3 stoplights in the town when I was born. There were tons of vacant lots. It was really military influence. So you've got the SEALs on basically the south end of the island, and then you have the air wing on the north end of the island. And so there were our neighbors, all of our neighbors were admirals when I was a kid. And it was just a cool place to grow up, just really tight knit community and super bike friendly and very active in sports and kid centric. It was a neat little place.
Really incredible part of the country. But you actually decided to leave and go 500 miles north to Stanford, I believe. That's where you got educated?
Yeah, I did. So I went to Stanford on an ROTC scholarship, actually, from the Marine Corps. So the Marine Corps paid for me to go to school.
That's the way to do it. It's not cheap otherwise.
Especially Stanford.
It was, and not just the economics of it, which were obviously fantastic, but the quality of the peer group that the Marine Corps ROTC puts you in was something I didn't appreciate going into it, but really cherish 25 years later when those people are still really good friends of mine and some of the highest caliber people I've ever met.
Explain to me how it works in ROTC. My dad, he actually had his medical school paid for by the Air Force. And I was born on an Air Force base in Blytheville, Arkansas. He was repaying it. It was a year for year in medical school. So he owed 3. How did the ROTC do it?
Yeah, very similar. So you owe 4. And when you're in school once a week, all the ROTC, so it's Navy ROTC, and then they have a Marine Corps element within that group. So about 100 of us drawn from University of California, Berkeley, UC Davis, Hayward. There's a school in Hayward that had some kids that went there, kids over at Stanford. Once a week, we'd all get together at Berkeley and go to classes on military subjects. We'd be dressed in uniform, learning sort of the basics of what it's like to be an officer in the Navy or the Marine Corps. And then afterwards, after you graduate, you get commissioned. As for me, it was a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps. For the Navy people, it was an ensign in the Navy. And then you're shipped off to your first training assignment within the military.
Is that a pretty not brutal, maybe that's not the right word, but just a rough transition going from kind of the carefree college lifestyle to being, thrown into the military? Or is ROTC prepared you for that? I have to imagine it's quite a life change.
It's a great question. No one's really asked that question before, and especially when you're at a place like Stanford that's fairly liberal.
Right.
I think ROTC did a good job of giving us some insight into what military life experience would be like. And then the Marine Corps does a good job of sending all the ROTC candidates to officer candidate school in Quantico, Virginia. And so you get 6 weeks as an officer candidate with a drill instructor and the whole 9 yards after your junior year of college. And so that 6-week exposure, I think, is the real, predecessor to your military experience, right? It's the thing that prepares you. And if you make it through that, then you're pretty well situated for the 6-month course that follows your actual graduation from college.
Got it. And that's still it is a continuation of your education of sorts. And they're preparing, and at that time of global unrest, they were preparing you for the Middle East. And I think you actually did deploy in the Persian Gulf, I believe, was it?
Wow. Yeah. You guys did your homework.
We did a little research on you.
Yeah. So I signed up for ROTC during the first Gulf War. I was in high school. I was a senior in high school. And so that was happening when I actually signed up to do ROTC. And then when I got into the Marines in 1995, the first Gulf War and Somalia were over. There was some stuff going on in Albania, but the focal point of the Marine Corps is truly to prepare everyone in the Marine Corps to carry a rifle in combat and prevail over the enemy. That's what the Marine Corps does.
What do they say? First in, last out?
Yeah. First to fight is sort of the tagline of the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And it's true. If you look at many of the battles that this country fights, it's the Marine Corps that's there first in the worst section of the battle and leaving once the work is done. And, that's appealing in many ways. It also sucks in many ways. Mm-hmm. So, but we were sent over in 1998. We were deployed over to the Persian Gulf in response to the Iraqis massing on the border again, the border of Kuwait. And by the time we got there, so they sent over a squadron of F-15s. They launched, I don't know how many dozens of Tomahawks. It might have been in the hundreds. And they sent over 2,000 Marines. And I was one of those 2,000 Marines that were sent over to the Middle East. And by the time we got there, everything was actually pretty sorted out. And then, and then while we were there, the country of Eritrea and the country of Ethiopia decided to get into a war, or actually to reignite a civil war. And so we had to pull some Americans out of Eritrea. And that was, at the time, a very sort of sexy thing to have been a part of. Now, it's not even like a footnote compared to what's happened in the last 17, 18 years since 2001.
Yeah. How long were you deployed, and how long were you, actively part of the Marines?
I was in the Marine Corps for 4.5 years and deployed for 6 months.
Okay. So not the long, like, what is a normal deployment? I feel like I have some Marine buddies that have been deployed just years and years and years.
Well, when I was in, it was 6-month rotations,
Okay.
like clockwork.
That's nice.
Now the rotations, they last anywhere from 6 to 8 months, and then you can extend in country. But usually, it's unusual for somebody to be over there for more than a year straight without coming back to rotate back to the U.S. and then they'll do another deployment.
Got it.
Yeah, and a lot of the Marines in my platoon ended up doing multiple deployments over in Afghanistan and Iraq in the 2000s.
Did you think about another deployment, or were you excited to get back and work in the civilian sector?
Yeah, so I got out in 99, the very end of 99, December of 99. And I don't know if I was excited to work in the civilian sector, but I felt like I had a great Marine Corps experience and I was interested to see what was sort of next. Mm-hmm. And at the time in 1999, there was nothing going on. I mean, the most exciting thing that had happened the last few years was literally this evacuation of some people out of Eritrea. So it was a very, very peaceful time in the history of the
calm
Marine Corps.
Before the storm of 2001.
For sure. Yeah, that nobody
seen
I
coming.
was involved with had any insight into that event happening.
Right. And then I believe, if my notes are correct here, it was Palomar Technologies that you went to work for?
Yeah. So I got out of the Marine Corps and was placed at a semiconductor capital equipment company, which made huge pieces of equipment, like $500,000 pieces of equipment that did very hard assembly processes for the semiconductor industry, which candidly, I knew absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I was gonna say right? you led snipers, and you grew up on a marine or near a military base. How did you get thrown into the world of semiconductors?
So that was exploding in 1999.
Oh, I remember. Yeah,
and so this company had been part of Hughes Aircraft.
Okay,
and so they had a lot of technology that had been doing very, very hard things for a long time. And fiber optic telecommunication components, with the explosion of the internet, the fiber optics industry was going through the roof in 1999, and fiber optic components are very hard to assemble. And so these companies that like Nortel Networks and Lucent and Agilent and these companies that had been telecommunication companies for years that Palomar people had never even heard of were all of a sudden buying millions and millions of dollars of their equipment in order to produce these little things that actually no one at Palomar really knew anything about. And so they hired a guy who didn't know anything about it, me, to learn about this industry. So it was a great, great educational experience where they basically said, hey, we will fly you anywhere in the world. We'll buy you any book. You can talk to any expert.
Need you to figure this one out.
You need to figure out why these guys are buying our equipment and what we need to do to the equipment in order to make it better so that they'll buy more of it that is, more expensive equipment.
Right. Well, when you got a big problem, you call in the Marines, right?
Yep.
First in, let them solve it.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. Well, I mean, I'm going down the chronological path here. Like I said, 12 lives, we could dig into all of them. But in the interest of time, I want to fast forward a little bit to this idea of ElliptiGO. And I think at the time you were working for, was it McKinsey and Company when you had the idea for this?
So actually, I was clerking for a federal judge.
Okay.
When I had the idea. And really the genesis for it was I'm a lifelong runner. Since I was about 10 years old, I was runner, never fast, and not like you. I ran long distances, not 800 meters. But the core fitness, I guess, solution for me was running for all the reasons that there's 50 million runners in the country. And I never really anticipated doing something else. I got into triathlon, and so I did an Ironman and had some really nice bikes, but running was my core exercise. And at the age of like 32, I found myself unable to run for fitness. Like my knees and my hips just every time I go for like a 3 or 4 mile run, or if I tried to run, a sub 7 mile or something, it just felt like it was super painful during the process. And it took me 2 or 3 days to recover from it.
Preaching to the choir. That's what caused me to retire right around the same age.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Just kind of wear your pieces out, right? Just like a car, you wear your pieces out, except we can't go get our, brakes changed or anything. You have to live with it. I'm with you, man. I miss running so much. It was my favorite. I called it the glue that held the rest of my life together. And the first year after I retired, I just kind of floated around, putting on pounds and drinking a lot of beer and just like, well, I don't really know what my life's like without running. I'm not as mechanically inclined as you are. So I didn't have the foresight to create something incredible like ElliptiGO, but I use your product now today to supplement the mileage that I can't get on my hips and knees. But when you were thinking of this, obviously it didn't exist. So are you going to the gym and using an elliptical and thinking to yourself, this allows me to work out, but man, it sucks being inside. How can I translate this motion to the road?
That is exactly right.
Love it. I love it. It's just, it's a product born of necessity. It's like saying, I got a problem and I need to fix this.
Yeah, because it was like, I didn't want to get into, the cycling culture is not my culture.
No, it's a little too intense for me.
It really is just different, right?
Yeah.
And so I found myself going to the gym, and literally I would get on to, you probably appreciate this, my goal every day when I got to the gym was to break the elliptical machine.
Just
I'm
beat that thing up.
Like in 30 minutes, I'm going to break this. I never broke one. And it was hilarious. I was talking to Adam Goucher. I was telling him this story. We were just chatting one day.
Yeah.
He's like, I actually broke 2.
Wow.
And I was like, you bastard. Like,
he's another guy that got sidelined with injuries as we get older.
Yeah. He said, I broke 2. And I was like, well, that's because you're
he's a machine. Yeah.
But yeah, and so I was on this elliptical machine and I thought, this sucks. Like the rest of my life,
you're going to be stuck there. Yeah.
I'm either going to get fat or I'm going to be coming to a gym for the sole purpose of not getting as fat as I otherwise would be.
Mm-hmm.
There's no joy in it. There was no competition.
It just work at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, exactly. It's like a job.
And I don't know about you, but when I'm out in nature and whether I'm biking or on the elliptical or running, just my brain works better. I'm breathing that fresh air and I'm thinking more clearly. I think my synapses are firing faster. I don't get that when I'm in a gym. I just kind of I keep looking at the watch and I'm like, is this thing over yet? I don't get into that flow state that I get when I'm outside.
For sure. And I totally missed that. Exactly. That runner's sort of mental freedom to think in a way that it's just hard to think anywhere else in any other time of the day.
But Bryan, anybody else that is experiencing that just says, oh, well, I guess this is my life. I'm going to sit here and, put up with it for 30 minutes a day, every day. And that's just the way it is. Not you. The Marine says, I'm going to figure this one out. The guy that worked for the semiconductor business,
exactly.
It's trained him to say, if I have a problem, I'm going to go in and I'm going to figure out a solution for it. So how did you figure this solution out?
Yeah. So I did what any smart person would do. I called somebody who was smarter than me.
I love it.
I said, hey, I think this thing should exist. Do you think you can make it?
But do you have like a little like drawing on a napkin or do you have a CAD file? Like what do you have at this point?
So the very first thing I did was I had some ruled paper, some like small ruled squared like engineering paper that I somehow acquired at Palomar.
Nice.
And I somehow still had it 5 years later or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I drew out, and this drawing is actually hanging above my desk.
Oh, I love this. Cool. That's so awesome. One of my employees framed it and put some cool little stuff around it. That's cool.
But yeah, so I drew this thing, and then what my little vision was, then I went to my computer and on Microsoft Word, I tried to recreate the same thing, using stick and line figures. And then I drove 500 miles to meet the guy, Brent Teal, who's our co-founder, who's a much better runner than I am, and also an Ironman triathlete. And we developed new products together at Palomar and trained for triathlon together at Palomar. So he was the guy I thought of like, here's somebody who could actually make this thing into being. But when I got to the meeting, I realized I didn't bring any of my drawings with me.
Oh no.
I totally forgot them. I drove 500 miles and like I didn't have them. So we were at a coffee shop. I grabbed a newspaper and I drew it out again on a newspaper. So we still have that newspaper too. But it was a trip. So he's like, yeah, I could build that, but I'm sure it already exists. And I'm like, dude, I don't think it exists. I've
been looking for it. Yeah.
Months. Yeah.
So did you hire a patent attorney or did you just start combing through bike shops and Google listings, or how did you vet this idea?
Yeah, started with Google, really trying to buy one.
Mhm.
And then we moved into patents. And we spent several months trying to find somebody who had thought of this and filed a patent on it and all of those good things. And we just couldn't. There really wasn't anything out there that was what we wanted. And so we started to write our own patent. This is 2005. And we filed that patent and we started building prototypes. And if you ever come down to our offices, you may have seen photos of these, but we have all the old prototypes hanging
Oh,
on
I'd
the
love to
wall.
see those.
It's the best. It's the only reason to come to the office. They're pretty cool. And
Well, and also it's in Southern California, so that's like
Yeah,
you don't have
that's
to
not
twist my
bad.
arm. Yeah,
if it's January, there are other reasons to come to the
yeah.
office.
But speaking of
yeah.
patents, you guys basically became like experts at creating and getting patents. I think there's over 20 to your name.
Yeah, we're 30.
Wow.
That's a good question. I don't know how many my name is on. I would bet 20 is probably right.
Yeah.
But the company now has 37.
Wow. I mean,
And
I guess when
think
you're
we
building
have-
something from scratch that no one's ever done
Mhm.
before, you're probably having to figure out dozens of little pieces
Yeah.
that make this thing run, and not just on one model, but multiple models. Talk about those first prototypes. What was easy to figure out, and what were the real obstacles you guys had to overcome?
Well, the first thing we thought was that other people, we assumed like, hey, thing should exist. It's pretty obvious to do it. So other people must have tried this thing. It must be impossible to ride, but it's probably super fast
Mhm.
because you're in this stand up, like using your weight and your power the whole time.
Yeah.
And so the first thing we had to overcome was sort of our own knee jerk sort of expectations of what this thing would be like. And what it turned out was on the first prototype, it was super easy to ride. But as you know, when you get up to 20 miles an hour or so, you're doing a lot of work because there's so much drag because you're going through the world like a runner.
That's why I love it. I like that I
Right.
have to work on this. I mean, I'm pushing through the thick Eugene air, and I'm just
Exactly.
sweating, and my legs are burning, and my lungs are burning, and I'm like, I'm getting a workout and not beating up my knees and hips at the same time.
Exactly. And I agree. I think that ends up being an advantage to us. And so it ended up being way better than we expected in that regard because our fear was no one would really be able to ride it, but it'd be super fast.
Well, they are phenomenally stable once you get that thing
Yeah.
going. I mean, it takes a
once you're
a
on.
pump or two to get it up, but then
Yeah.
inertia just takes over, and it's such it's such like a smile-inducing experience. You know,
Totally.
being on your feet and that running
Yeah.
motion and the vantage point. You're up taller than when you're on a bike. It's just really kind of a cool, unique experience.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we started to experience that right away. People were going crazy. The first ride I did, I went 20 miles.
Wow.
I hit 20 miles an hour. We actually have the whole ride on film. It's like an hour or something,
That's cool.
hour and a half on film. And people are like, sticking their heads out of cars, yelling
What
at
is
me.
that?
What is that? What are you doing?
You know you have something if people are shouting at you on
Yeah.
the street. Where can I
No,
find
exactly.
that?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the prototype.
Yeah.
So really we spent 5 years developing prototypes, figuring out what the challenges were, coming up with solutions, patenting those solutions, really just trying to get the thing off the ground because we both were, had full-time jobs. I was at McKinsey. Brent was a mechanical engineer doing research and development for another company. And so it was a long process, but we really wanted to get it right. And I think we did because the first product we launched is the product you ride today.
Mm.
We still sell it today. It's still the standard in the industry. There's
You
nothing
got it
out there
right
better.
if it's survived
Yeah.
that many years.
Yeah, it's 10 years.
Wow.
It's the same system and it's still the best thing out there.
Very cool.
So we really feel good about doing it the way we did, even though everyone and their brother was telling us we needed to launch the second prototype and you'll fix it once it's on the market and you'll make it better once it's on the market. And we took our own approach and we think
do it
it worked
right
out.
from day one. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's such a great product. I think other than just like the experience, which is very unique, I love, like I mentioned, that you feel you've gotten a great workout. I love that I'm not saddle sore afterwards. I think that the
Totally.
closest thing you can describe to it is cycling, but it's not cycling. It's something very, very different, very unique. Bryan, are you spending when you're working out now, is it most on elliptical or are you, mixing it up? I know you were a triathlete. What does your weekly workout, regime look like?
So for the longest time, it was 5 to 7 days of ElliptiGO.
Nice.
Period.
Yeah.
That was literally all I was
Basically
doing.
just translating your running miles to elliptical miles.
Yeah, basically just and so the advantages of the ElliptiGO I've found is that you can do hard workouts every day, back to back. You sort of don't need a rest day,
Right.
which is weird to say, but it's it's
But without
actually the
without the
case.
pounding, you're not going
Because
to
you're not
experience that.
pounding,
Yeah.
you don't need the rest day. So that's the huge upside, in my opinion. The other great upside is you get to go places you never go running. Just because, I'll go out for 20 miles a day, and then I've done 100 milers. I mean, you can only run so far. My normal running route was like 4 miles loop or a 6-mile loop. I ran the same loop every time. And so those are the two advantages. The downside, of course, is you have this piece of equipment that can get a flat tire, is expensive, is bulky, you have to store it somewhere. So there's definitely advantages to running, but
until you can't.
There's
until you can't anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Until you can't.
Or even I have so many friends that are pro runners, and they like it just to supplement their mileage. You're running 70, 80, 90 miles a week. 5 p.m. comes around and you've already logged 14 miles that morning.
Yeah.
You don't want to bang your knees and hips back into the ground. It's a great way to continue to supplement your mileage.
Well, it's funny because when I started to learn about elite runners, I was like, least trained endurance athletes in the world. You guys run like 10 to 15 hours a week.
Yeah.
Total, right?
But one of my things I always said was I'm so grateful that I was a pro runner and not a pro golfer or cyclist, because you can only run so many miles in a day. And so we would have hours and hours of free time. Whereas if you're a pro golfer, a pro cyclist, you're probably working out 5, 6, 8, 10 hours a day. Exactly.
A cyclist will train 30 hours a week. Easy.
Oh, no doubt.
Swimmer.
I remember
Phelps
reading.
was in the pool.
Or
25 to 40 hours a week.
I remember Lance, not to get into the Lance controversy, but he once said, I wouldn't even get on the bike if I wasn't going to ride for at least 2 hours. And I'm like, 2 hours is the longest run I will ever do all week. Yeah.
So it's a totally different, there's so much opportunity, I think,
I agree,
to add cardiovascular work to a runner and get the benefits of that cardiovascular
I completely
work.
agree.
So that's what the smart runners are doing. Absolutely. They're doing a hard workout on the track, and then boom, they're going to put in an hour on the ElliptiGO that evening.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day, maybe a 2-hour hard ElliptiGO ride while they're recovering from their track workout.
And I've seen some of the world's best endurance athletes do just that. So you guys really nailed it. And the other thing that I think you've done a great job is, I'm a little spoiled because I get to go to the running event every year and see these things out, riding around the convention center. But you did the virtual reality demo experience. And I just felt like, even before I'd ever really gone out and taken an ElliptiGO outside, I felt like I was in San Diego, riding up and down the beach in this virtual reality experience.
Beautiful.
Cam, you did the same thing, didn't you?
Yeah, it's so awesome. And my family has an ElliptiGO too. We love it. We'll take it out on the trails. Right on. Yeah, it's so much fun. And then we actually have the stand-up bike here in the office.
Oh, the stand-up bikes. That's a popular one around here.
Oh, cool.
Oh, I was going to ask you what led to the stand-up bike.
Yeah, it was interesting. What we found was our products, the ElliptiGO 8C, which is probably what you have, Nick, is our sort of standard bearer product, but it's expensive. It's $2,700. And we found that it's expensive because it's really hard to build that frame. And then all the components are expensive. And we didn't see a path to getting that product less expensive. But what we found was, if you take away the emulation of running, so that long stride length and that feeling of running, and you just say, okay, what I really think is valuable is full body workout, working out my core, weight bearing, having that great line of sight, no seat pain, the extra work you can put in because of the drag without having to go super fast. If that's the basket of value that you see from the ElliptiGO, we can deliver that to you in a much less expensive package, which is the sub. So the sub is the stand-up bike, and it's only $800. So it's less than a third the cost of the long stride bike. And it doesn't emulate running, but it gives a heck of a workout. And for a lot of people, $800 is barely affordable. $2,700 is just not happening.
Yeah.
So the whole point behind the sub was, let's capture as much of the benefits of that ElliptiGO experience and put it in the least expensive package we can put it in.
I think that's brilliant. It's a great product.
Yeah. And you're able to reach that customer that really wants to try ElliptiGO, but maybe can't afford it.
Exactly. I mean, that's the real, and our hope. Or the other thing, maybe they can afford it, but it's like $2,700 for something that no one else I know has, that I'm not sure I'm really going to use. Let me how do I tiptoe my way into this industry? How do I tiptoe my way into stand-up cycling? So here's an entry-level experience, and then ride that for a year. And if you love it, then let's move up to the long stride. You'll feel the extra benefits in the balanced leg workout and activation and all the other things.
Bryan, the entrepreneur in me is just super curious about distribution. Here at Run Gum, our product weighs next to nothing. We can ship it all over the world.
Yeah.
But a bike is a little bit different. How did you guys tackle the distribution problem?
We got lucky. We are what used to be called UPS shippable, but basically our package size is below the maximum box size for shipping via FedEx and UPS ground. So actually, when we were designing the system, we weren't designing it so it would fit in that size of a box.
Got it.
We wanted to solve the problem, right? We wanted to deliver a running-like experience without impact. But we were just lucky that the way we did it puts us in the category that has not incredibly expensive shipping costs. And then we just deal with it, right? So when we take 100 bikes fits in a container. So we just buy them by the container load. We have 100 bikes that comes in and we stack them up. And then when somebody buys, the good news is when we sell one, it's a very big item that leaves. So it creates a lot of space when it's gone.
True.
So you don't have to sell that many to clear out a warehouse.
But even at the sub at the lower price point of $800, it's an expensive barrier to entry if someone hasn't had a chance to demo the product. So where are people demoing this typically? Yeah,
so we sell through running stores.
Okay, makes sense.
Fitness stores, like places where you'd buy like an elliptical trainer.
I've seen a lot. We were in many running specialty stores. We love visiting our run specialty partners, and I love they almost take the ElliptiGO and they make it like the centerpiece of their store. Like it's up on like this like shrine almost with lights coming down and everyone. It's a talking point, right? And people just love to see the mechanics of it. So you've got the running stores. Not to bring up a sore subject. What was the big bike chain that recently went under that we were talking to?
Performance.
Yeah, Performance. What happened with Performance?
So that is a real sad story for ElliptiGO. They represented over 25% of our total distribution.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, it was a real kick in the teeth. And without getting into too many details, the bike industry stuff, nobody really thought Performance would actually go bankrupt.
I mean, they were the largest specialty bike store in the United States. By far, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say monopoly, but I mean, we were trying to get into cycling with Run Gum, and they were it. I mean, that's like the pinnacle of bike specialty.
Yep, and they are no more. So that was a very, very painful process for many people, and we did not escape that pain.
So where are people going now to buy bikes?
Yeah, so we sell through running stores, fitness stores, and then we have bike stores all over the country.
Cool.
Yeah, we have a dealer locator on our website where you can go and put in your zip code and it'll show you the closest locations to where you are.
We will absolutely be sure to link that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, please do.
What's the future for ElliptiGO? Is it just increased awareness? Is it new products? What are you guys working on today?
Yeah, so we just launched our first off-road.
Really? I haven't seen this yet. I love it. The Trail Rider.
Yes. So we launched it maybe 6 weeks ago. Okay.
Congratulations.
And thank you. New products are always hard to launch.
So hard.
Mm-hmm.
So our first off-road bike is something we've wanted to do for a really long time. It's called the M Sub for mountain. So the mountain stand-up bike. It's got full-size wheels. So it has 27.5 inch.
You put 27.5 inch tires on that thing?
I gotta see this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We figured out how to keep your body height the same as on the sub.
Center gravity low and big wheels.
Center gravity super low.
Yeah.
So it's disc brakes. It's got a front suspension fork.
What's the clearance on it?
Just like a regular mountain bike.
Really? Wow. I got to see this.
Yeah.
This is right up my alley.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Very cool.
So in fact, just go to our website and under shop, you'll see the mountain sub is displayed proudly. And so that just came out and we're working on a couple more new products this year. So we've continued to try to feed that new product pipeline and try to grow the industry and grow awareness and continue to build, just legitimacy within the running industry to continue to show that if you're smarter about training, you'll go faster.
I love it. Just try to and helping people. I mean, like myself, somebody who's used up his knees, used up his ankles, not have to be chained to a machine inside a sweaty gym. It's a real blessing.
Yeah, no, our customers are such great quality people. They're former runners, almost, a lot of them, and they have that sort of running attitude, and they're so appreciative of getting back what they thought they would never get back, which is that running like experience. And so it's just been, that part is the coolest part of what we do.
If our listeners are former runners or anybody looking for an incredible experience, make sure you go to elliptigo_USA on social media, or go to elliptigo.com and learn all about these incredible machines.
Yeah, and Nick's lighting up. He's looking at the M sub. He's ready to
I'm simultaneously on Google buying an M sub right now.
Yeah, no, it's super fun.
So I love it. Bryan, can't thank you enough for your time. Thank you for sharing your story.
For coming on the show.
Oh, it's been great. It's always fun to chat with you guys, and congratulations on the success of Run Gum.
Thanks very much.
People at the office love it.
We'll keep you guys caffeinated.
Yeah, keep them caffeinated.
Love it.
It's clearly a product that resonates with our employees.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Bryan.
Hey, thank you guys.
Talk soon.
A big thank you to everyone for joining us on that episode. If you want to find out more or listen to other episodes, go to rungum.com/podcast. Also, please make sure to subscribe on iTunes or your preferred player. I'm Nick Simmons, and you've been listening to the Run the Day podcast. Until next time.